Welcome back to our series on moves in Oclef notation. In our previous video, we explored crossovers, cross-unders, pivot crossovers, and shifts. Today, we'll continue building your understanding of our notation system by introducing three more essential movements: stretches, folds, and jumps. As pedagogy students, you'll soon be helping beginning piano students understand these movements that you perform intuitively. Let's go ahead and dive in. Starting with stretches. A stretch occurs when you extend beyond the natural 5-finger position without changing the hand position itself. In a natural position, your fingers cover 5 adjacent keys. But what happens when you need to reach beyond a note, just beyond that position? That's where stretches come in. A single stretch extends your hand to cover 6 keys instead of 5. You're keeping the same basic hand position, but reaching 1 key further than your natural span. A double stretch covers 7 keys, extending your reach by 2 notes beyond a natural 5-finger position. And a triple stretch, which is essentially an octave, covers 8 keys. This is typically the maximum comfortable stretch for most hands. For example, if we look here, the thumb is on middle C, and the 4th finger is on F, which means that our 5th finger, if drawn in as a note, would be on E. So if I were to annotate the music using Oclef notation, this current position would be a stretch position, which looks like that. Now, if we had to demonstrate what a double stretch would be, it'd be where the thumb would be on D. Currently it's on middle C, but if it were on D, the distance between the lowest finger, finger 5 on E, and the thumb, if it were on D, that would be a double stretch. So if it were up here, just above. And if we were to go one further, 2 ledger lines, as previously mentioned, if it were an octave, then that would be, if we had it like that, that would be where we have an octave position, and that would be a triple stretch. Next, let's look at a fold. This is an interesting movement that essentially makes your hand smaller than a 5-finger position in order to take on a new position. So let's imagine for a second that you're playing a scale with fingers 1, 2, and 3, and after playing 3, instead of crossing your thumb under, which would be a cross under, your thumb takes on the position where finger 2 was. And when your hand pushes up from there, you're in a new position. That is a fold. So in a way, it's like a shift up by a step, but the way that you get there is through folding the hand. And this technique is especially useful in legato passages where the cross under might disrupt the smooth connection between the notes. Let's take a look in the music example here. In this example, finger 4 is coming down to 3, to 2, and to 1. Then finger 4, which was previously on A in the right hand treble clef, comes to G. And in this position, the distance between fingers 1 and 4 is smaller than a natural position. Therefore, this is a fold, and the way that we would represent that is by drawing in the notation. That looks like that. Now, in this case, it actually continues to happen multiple times. Happens again here and again here. So the other thing that you might have noticed in the music is that it's demonstrating a motive and sequence. So that would be another thing to talk about with the student, is that very often folds can happen in a sequence. And that's what you would draw for this. Finally, let's discuss jumps. A jump occurs when the hand moves beyond its current position by a larger interval, typically beyond what would be considered a shift. While shifts happen within the scope of a hand position, jumps take you to a completely different area of the keyboard. We often label jumps with a specific instruction like octave jump or jump to B flat. And this way, it'll clearly communicate the destination. Jumps require a different technique than shifts. With a shift, you're moving your hand position by a small amount. keeping the basic hand shape. Whereas with a jump, you typically need to briefly lift your hand from the keyboard, reorient, and place it in a new position. And in beginning repertoire, jumps are often challenging for students because they require both physical coordination and the ability to quickly locate new positions on the keyboard with their eyes. Our notation helps students anticipate these jumps before so they can prepare for them. Let's take a look at an example here in the music. In the right hand here, finger 1 begins on F. After it finishes this 5-finger position from F to C, we can look and see that the thumb has now moved to a higher position. Specifically, it's the F at the top of the treble staff. Therefore, the distance between this F, the current position, and the new position is an octave. So the way that we would write this in within Oclef notation is by drawing in an upward arrow to represent the jump, and then we will label it with the distance. So we can write it as an abbreviation or as a full word. For now, I'll just put in these 3 letters, which represent octave. The student knows to go from the F here to the same note, 1 octave higher. This is what we would call an octave jump. Okay, moving on to your assignment. During your Kaizen shadowing sessions, observe how professors incorporate these 3 movements into their teaching. Pay special attention to 1. How they differentiate between when to use a stretch versus when to use a shift. 2. How they teach students to execute folds smoothly, and this includes both physically and how to think about it mentally. 3. How they prepare students for jumps, especially in terms of keyboard geography, whether moving forward when going to the black keys, or whether thinking about the patterns of keys that they are jumping to. Example, using black keys as a reference point when jumping from one white key to another. Your assignment is to identify when professors use these movement notations in their teaching. Note how these symbols help beginning students overcome specific technical challenges. Practice adding these notations to a simple piece of music that your professor in this class will provide for you. Also, consider documenting how the notation impacts the student understanding and performance. In our next session, we'll explore more complex combinations of these movements and how they're used in intermediate repertoire. Remember, as pedagogy students, your goal is to make the implicit explicit.